Welcome to the Growth Engine podcast, where we explore the driving forces behind successful marketing strategies in financial services. Today, we're delighted to have Brian Stewart, Global Head of Customer Insight, Web Experience and Analytics at AXA Investment Managers, join us. With a rich career spanning over 20 years, Brian has built an impressive track record in the insight and research field, specialising in the effective use of market research tools and technologies and implementing strategies that place the customer at the heart of business decisions. At AXA, Brian's role encompasses a broad scope, including the transformation of customer data to enhance web experiences and analytics. Join us as Brian shares his perspective on the role of data analytics in shaping customer engagement strategies. Brian, thanks for joining us today. To get us going, could you maybe give us a bit of background to how you got into financial services and how you started your career?
Let's start with how I started my career, and then I'll move into how I got into financial services. I started my career basically in information and working at the European Commission in Environmental Affairs straight after university. And then I got this fascination about trying to find information and insight for clients. So that was kind of my base. I then moved to the UK in 2000 and worked for a tech company called Nortel Networks, where I was doing research and then finding and trying to understand customer behaviors, new product development, customer satisfaction, all that type of stuff. So that was in the early days of 2000. And then, of course, the bubble burst and I moved into T-Mobile. And that was a really, really key point for me because I was working in research, competitive intelligence. And then there was this whole other team of data people who was analyzing all the data. And I saw a great opportunity to merge both, to give this 360-degree view of the customer. And then I became really fascinated in how can we actually tap into this and really start to tap in maybe to the subconscious need of customers that they don't know what they actually want through marketing, and then applying that to campaigns and so forth and to insight. Following T-Mobile, I then worked at Dell, very, very similar for a bit, and then went to British Gas. And again, it was all around leveraging this customer behavioral data set, which I feel is always untapped in many organizations. And I always worked in B2B, very rarely worked in the B2C environment. So, and B2B kind of insight is really quite more challenging because they have a different kind of sales cycle. They take longer to do that. Their attitudes to buying will be different to a consumer potentially. So that was all around building segmentations, leveraging NPS at that time. They were using it and really driving that back into the business. And also then working with the data sets to bring modeling into it, to bring in lead scoring, to bring in next best action into the sales teams. And that was really quite challenging as well. So we did a couple of experiments, around, right, here's a model data set. And they'd go away and they'd look at it and then say it doesn't work and we don't believe you. And then we'd go in blind with a data set which was modeled and they thought it was brilliant and all this type of stuff. So it was a really, really fascinating time. Following British Gas, this opportunity came up where I am now at AXA Investment Managers to create an insight function from scratch, effectively. And for those of your listeners and viewers who are in insight, for me, it was nirvana. Basically setting up a whole function, never existed before. I was the first employee in the team. And then it was growing the team to bring in research, to bring in data insight, and to bring in transformation into the organization. While at the same time, there was a lot of cultural change that would have needed to have happened, right? So this was not something that was probably looked at. The customer behavioral data set was all about inflows, outflows, net new money, not really around understanding how customers interact and engage with your brand. So that was why I joined 7 years ago, next week. And it's been a real learning journey. I think I'd never worked in financial services. It's completely different to other organizations I've worked in, even though they may have been B2B, it has been a great challenge, massive, massive challenge. We remodeled all our websites, we've remodeled our fund centers, and it's bringing the customer experience element right to the fore within marketing. We still have a long way to go, I think. I think data maturity in the asset management space around the customer is probably less advanced than many organizations. But I think everyone is moving in the right direction. Having spoken to my peers and other asset managers, we're all going in the same direction at different speeds. But we still all have the same challenges, and I think we'll probably talk about challenges later. But that's how I got into insight, into customer. You know, there's the old cliche, right? Walking in the customer's shoes and everything else. But that is what I love doing. I'm fascinated by customer behavior. I had opportunities to go into mainstream marketing, but I decided, no, do you know what? I just love this.
Brian, just picking up on a couple of points that you mentioned there. You talked about data maturity within coming into the industry. Obviously, asset management very, very different from where you've come from. What can you give me any overview what you mean by that? And I'm also wondering about if there's different phases that you would go through as an organization to go from a kind of starting point to data maturity of that, being able to track that customer behavior.
Let's be clear, I am talking about the customer behavior and how it engages with your brand and all its different touch points. I think when I arrived, and one of the reasons I was brought in as well is because of my experience in B2B at British Gas and working in T-Mobile, where the data, you know, is a lot more mature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's begin. What I mean by that is because it's never been focused on, there hasn't been great emphasis on collecting that type of data, because primarily I believe they couldn't see any real benefit, right? So one of the first things I did when I came in, what I was tasked with, we had 5 different email systems that were sending emails and communications to all the clients around the globe. You couldn't track it. Pretty basic stuff. So we brought in one marketing automation tool, which is now used globally, which everything is tracked effectively. And we can see how well campaigns are performing. We can then use other data sets to see, you know, to start to develop marketing effectiveness, you know, because at the end of the day, my boss at the time, the key question is, I've given you X amount of euro on this campaign. What's the return for me?
Course,
and it's all about value. Let's be clear. It's all about value back into the business, especially, you know, when it's not really quite understood why we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a key challenge. So the next thing then is around CRM systems, right? Which is the golden source of all information. So I built up a strategy very quickly around this interconnection of all the different data points to give one 360-degree view of the customer. So that was another area that needed to be examined. And again, the culture, the data culture probably wasn't there. So a lot of the sales guys would have their own contacts. They mightn't see the benefit of saying, oh, I've had this meeting with this person and so forth. So it was an education element. And I learned this back in my days at Nortel back in 2000s, where, you know, if I scratch your back, you'll scratch my back, right? So there's benefit in everything. So, you know, if I can show value to the sales guys, they'll continue to do it. And that's an ongoing journey, right? And the journey we've been on over the last 7 years has been tremendous, because now we are talking about engagement. We're talking about customer experience, when 7 years ago, those were questions which were not very common, to be fair.
Just to make sure I understand exactly what we're talking about here. When you came in, we've got multiple systems, so we've got to firstly sort that one out. So we've got one source of truth.
Yeah.
We then need to create a bit of behavioral change within the organization, because the sales teams are, you know, before they know any better, they're kind of probably calling up their contacts, using notes in a diaries or however it is. Everyone works slightly differently. And you're asking to create uniformity across how they operate by filling in all of those touch points into the CRM system to generate the data.
Yeah, working very, very closely with tech and everything else, and making sure you're trying to collect the right data in the first instance. At the end of the day, your foundation needs to be based on data.
Yeah.
To do your ROI, to do your lead gen, to do your analytics on marketing effectiveness, you need robust data sets, right? And, the education, people may say, well, that's not really important. Because some of the questions I used to get at the very beginning say, right, I need historical data. And people would say to me, why do you need historical data?
Yeah.
So it's this just change. I need this to understand how these campaigns are doing, how these communications are doing. Because at the end of the day, our customer, well, we want them to open up our communications. We'll use email as an example.
Yeah.
If we're sending them the wrong thing, right, they're not going to open it. And actually, it has a negative impact on how people view our organization. So, it goes back to the old cliche, right? Right message, right time, right channel, right? And these are concepts which, at the time, 7 years ago, again, were relatively new. It was all relationship based. It was all, you and me sitting down, having a conversation. Now, post pandemic, it's completely changed. It's all digital. It's all, and we're playing in a very, very small pond with a lot of very strong competitors.
Yeah.
So it's getting that differentiation, but also that customer understanding to deliver that differentiation.
What impact has it had on AXA's overall strategy?
From a marketing perspective, everything now is based on two elements: lead generation and ROI, right? Return on investment is key. And generating sales, right? Or generating leads to sales. For me, those are the two things that I need to deliver. While at the same time, to get to that, you need to understand how well your campaigns are performing, how well your digital is performing, the customer journey. So, while that high end is, we want to get to there, everything underneath there has to be perfect to enable you to get there. So for us, we've been on this massive client experience and CX journey for the last 4 years. We completely remodeled our digital experience. I think we were one of the first asset managers in the industry to get rid of attestation on our websites. Which
What does that get rid of attestation?
So when you go onto a website, you'll say you're a professional investor, you're an individual, your thing. So we kind of took a bit of a risk, and we'll say, right, we're losing 50% of our traffic through attestation and cookie policy. People are just not going. So we also felt that as asset managers, if you don't know us, you're not going to come to our website probably because you're investing quite a lot of money. You might come and get some general information. So we felt that we could offer really good information on our website, but do it for all audiences, not just a professional audience or not just a retail audience. So we kind of broke the model a little bit on that front. And it's been very successful insofar as the traffic has gone up by about 120%. We won an award in 2022 from Investment Week. And then the second part of that was, and it also, sorry, I should say, it also refreshed our brand completely. We were able to do a lot more online. We changed our CMS and everything around that. And we're seeing, really good feedback and interaction on what we've achieved. The second part of that was around our fund centers. So our whole strategy on digital was to drive people via campaigns into our website, look at the campaign, and then onto the fund center, where they could actually get the real meaty information about the products that we are selling. So we've just completed a massive project where effectively we have given our key information in digital format. They can download the information, but they have all the information on the web. And we can see now already the engagement that we're getting, time on page, has again increased significantly. Even our sales guys, the feedback they've had has just been absolutely amazing. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to match our digital experience to the customer need, saving them time, giving them a good digital experience. And that differentiation is not just about going to a fund center, downloading a KID, downloading a prospectus. There's a lot more information there.
Really interesting listening to you talk about that process that you've been on. Congratulations on the award. Let's take it back a little bit, because you said, right, we've taken off that bit which really winds me up on the websites. Are you this? Are you that? Or that?
Yeah.
I understand that this problem coming from a search perspective, because you're duplicating the website, and Google only recognizes one site. So straight away, you're almost cannibalizing your own traffic if you have that. So I'm sure that that was part of the decision to take it away. But when you're sitting there redesigning that, who is involved in that conversation? Because your role, let me just get this right. Your role, global head of customer insight, web experience, and analytics. So you are sitting across there from a UX perspective. That falls in your remit. Presumably, you've got sales in there having a conversation as well, head of sales distribution, and presumably head of marketing. Who
Yeah.
else is involved in that
So
conversation?
the whole project involved, so it was the brainchild of my boss at the time, to redefine our whole digital experience. When you take on a project where you are basically breaking compliance, you know, norms, compliance have to be involved. So
Yeah.
we had a great design agency who worked with us immensely and were involved literally with the compliance conversations. We had to rewrite a large proportion of our content. We then we got a new content management system, which enabled us to meet the designs that the design agency had proposed. They had research. They'd done, primary research based on their mock-ups to understand what people wanted to get out of it. We then had sales involved. I mean, it was a massive change. It was a 2-year project,
Wow.
effectively. And, there was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of late nights, a lot of questions being asked. Why are we spending X amount of money for this, for a website?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think when people saw it, the feeling, it brought us up into the 21st century from a brand perspective. Brand team were heavily involved. All our images, all our colors, everything else is all on brand. And the journey is just so much better. So everyone was involved.
Yeah.
Compliance was probably the biggest one, and not just global compliance, but also local compliance, because we had to make sure that we complied with the local rules. I don't know off the top of my head the compliance rules in Hong Kong, for example.
Of course, yeah.
So they had a different perspective. So it was working with them, re-editing and so forth, to get us there.
I think you find it hard pushed to find anyone in the asset management industry that doesn't believe in tracking data, the benefits of more data to better inform the business. But that when you at the heart of that, that means that in order to gather more data, you've got to get more traffic coming through your digital vehicle. So straight away, removing those barriers on your website, you said one of the benefits is it's enormously increased the volume of traffic and enormously increased the amount that people are spending time on the site. So that in itself, because you've removed those friction points, you've got more data that's coming from it.
Have more data, yes. But it's also around the customer. It's a better experience for the client, right? For the customer.
Yeah.
And we're seeing other asset managers now doing similar in their own different way. They're kind of looking at it and go, right, they've done it. Maybe we could go down that route.
Yeah.
I have to also, congratulate and as well, or not congratulate, but also, give a bit of praise to our agency, our SEO agency, as well, because we are working with them all the time to increase our SEO, all the different projects that we're doing. And, it has been really successful, and it's more or less now taken care of itself.
Fantastic.
Effectively. And it's this end-to-end journey. So we have all the data, yes, absolutely, which is great. And we're collecting more and more data as we go. And again, it goes back to what I said before. The more data you have, the better. I remember, if I can digress ever so slightly, I remember, when we were talking about big data, everyone's going, wow, big data. But actually it was about relevant data. And if you took big data and the relevant data set was a lot smaller, the relevant data set and the big data set is actually becoming bigger. So the more data we have, the better it is.
You talked about from a you had to rewrite a number of the content. I'm interested in, is that because previously it had content specifically for professional, institutional, retail, and now you wanted to make it? So anything that you can tell us around that? And I'm also interested to understand what were the steps that the SEO agency has taken in order to presumably make the content more visible to the
So on the SEO side, we are working with them on an ongoing basis. We've just done a big piece on what we call authorship, which is linking authors and getting more traction through Google and their algorithm. And that is ongoing. It's an ongoing role. You just don't do it once.
No.
It has to repeat. Google are changing their algorithm all the time.
Yeah.
Now with AI, obviously, there's going to be more changes and so forth.
Yeah.
I think in relation to the content, it was really working with all the content specialists, with the content team, and with compliance to get to a place where we wouldn't be in breach of any compliance
Yeah.
areas. I will caveat and say there are areas which are where a pop-up will appear and say professional, but
Got it.
that will only happen when you hit that content,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the entry point,
Yes.
we've taken it away from the entry point. We're not, I remember when I was looking at the job, I'd come across this attestation. I didn't know an awful lot. And I go, what type of investor am I?
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
actually an investor in any way, shape, or form. What do I press?
Yeah.
If I press this one, will I get into trouble? This type of thing. So
Yeah.
I was being put off. So we've taken away from the beginning. And so that's how we did it.
Yeah.
But it was a hard slog, don't get me wrong.
I bet.
Rewriting loads of content, getting it done on time, getting it checked, getting it signed off, then getting it signed off by compliance, and so forth. And then it has to be updated as we go, right? So we kind of took let's go for an evergreen type approach with a lot of the content, which we update not as regularly, obviously, and then we had to get it translated and everything else. So that was a key time-consuming
Yes.
activity. And now with the SEO, the agency, we are just constantly changing and bringing in new developments. So as I said, we've just released this kind of new program in relation to authorship. We're also ensuring that we're not cannibalizing, our content and our data as well from website to website, and that will continue on.
Yeah, fantastic. So we've got that piece. I don't want to spend. There's so much there. I'd keep wanting to know more and more. I'm just one point. I'm presume that in order to do that structural change to the site, you must have had buy-in at the very senior level, because I just can't. I can imagine conversations like that I've been working in organizations that we work for would be non-starters. So there must have been this vision from up top. You mentioned it
Yes.
was your boss
Yeah,
initially, but they
yeah.
must have gone further up
Yeah,
to
it
get
did.
that.
So we had steercos
Yeah,
at the highest level.
yeah,
Everything was signed off. Um, and that is challenging because there is an investment involved.
yeah,
And, again, it goes back to the maturity of it. It's not just about inflows and outflows. This is why, it's only a website.
yeah,
And the key question, and do you know what? To a certain degree, it is a valid question. How much is a click worth to me?
yeah,
Right? Which is a valid question, but you need to have that web presence. Our strategy, though, from the get-go, was drive people into the web through campaigns, through emails, through other touch points, through ads and so forth, to get them to the fund center.
yeah,
And that is where the meat and the bones are,
yeah,
to be fair. And we're already seeing with the new digital experience on the fund centers, we are seeing increased downloads, increased time on page, because we don't want people to go elsewhere to get that information.
yeah.
We want them to come to us.
So in an ideal world, all paths would lead to the fund center.
Yeah. We don't sell online, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's talk a
From a
little.
digital perspective, the sales guys are doing their job as well, right? So
Yeah,
it's just one avenue, one channel.
I'm keen to let's talk a little bit about um, the overall digital ecosystem from a sales perspective, and the pieces that we need to connect from a technology point of view to make that piece function. Could we understand the website? We've talked about CRM. What are the other core building blocks that you need to have in place?
So I developed a strategy about 6 months after I arrived, which still holds true. And it's based on CRM, marketing enablement, sales enablement, and data-driven sales. And it's this ecosystem. Within that, yes, CRM is the golden source.
Mm-hmm.
You then have, when I first joined, it really was just marketing automation, web analytics, then a bit of social.
Mm-hmm.
But now so those are the key building blocks, right? And then linking it up to your financial information if you can access it. with the advent of MarTech, that has just exploded,
Yeah.
right? So there are so many different tools out there which are giving you added value or potentially added value, both at the top of the funnel for demand generation all the way through into lead generation and so forth. So that is constantly growing. But for us, and for me particularly, it was anything we get our hands on that we had, CRM, marketing automation, they're the big ones. Then we've got the Zoom data, or if I can say it, Bright Talk data, which we use. Anything where there's a touch point, where there's an engagement, and we can understand how that impacted the customer or how they felt about it. So what we've done is we've integrated marketing automation into our CRM. We've integrated our video platforms into our marketing automation. All new tools effectively now that we get need to be integrated somewhere or should be integrated. We've also created our own customer data platform, or we're leveraging a customer data platform, which everything flows into, which we do our analytics in. So our CRM goes in there, financial data, all our Eloqua data, which we use, all our Bright Talk, Zoom, everything goes into the one pot, which then my analytics team can then leverage to do modeling, to do analytics, and everything else. So that is the strategy that we have, and it still holds true today. And I think, having spoken to my peers, that is the way that everyone is going. CDPs, data flowing into that and leveraging that data.
Can you talk about the role of the analytics and
Mm,
insight team,
yeah.
and how the insight is mined essentially and then presumably fed into the sales teams?
Yeah. So there are many different roles which the guys are doing. One is actually helping tech build the platform, and teaching them or educating them the information flows that we need. Because again, it's something that was never used before. So they need to understand those data sets, the customer behavioral data set. On top of that, then it's around how do we take all this data, and there's a lot of it, and present it in a manner which is easy to comprehend for, dare I say, non-data people, right? So the easy way is through things like Power BI or data viz tools, Tableau we use, where people can see very quickly how well things are performing, right? Which companies are performing, which companies are engaging in a dashboard based on by country, right? We then do more sophisticated analytics in the customer data platform around who are potential leads. So we're now doing lead scoring. And we're sending those through to the sales guys. We're doing it at a country level. We're only picking one country at the moment because, again, it's a relatively new concept, and we're doing that with the UK because the team is right beside the UK sales teams. So we're meeting them every week, providing that insight back to them. And you're not going to get hundreds of leads every week. You might get one or two a month potentially, but it will also identify existing contacts who are either changing behavior in what they're reading or opening up new avenues for conversation. It also helps us to decide, right, who gets more, who would get a call from this person or that person because they really are starting to engage with their content, from an author level. So it's at various levels. The next thing that we're doing is all around demand generation at the top of the funnel. And how do we leverage that and then bring that into account-based marketing and so forth. So the insight team do many, many different roles. A technical role helps supporting the existing tech team because they have that background. Providing data in a very simplistic way back to marketeers and users, including senior management, and then more sophisticated analytics, while also examining, how do we automate it even more and so forth.
Just a couple of more questions around the sales team. So in a sense, you're focusing initially just on the UK, and then once you lock that down, you'll start rolling that out. Is that a two-way dialogue? Do sales teams sort of come back and say, "This is great, but actually, it'd be nice if we could have a little bit more on"? So it sounds, it's almost like it's a sort of working pilot in a way.
Yeah, I mean, my team, they have regular meetings with each of the local markets. One of the reasons why we chose the UK for this was, first up, they were beside us, so it's easier to engage with them.
Yeah.
Secondly, we had more data on the UK than we had for other markets. There are certain markets, smaller markets, where you don't have that amount of data. And what has happened probably over the last 12 months is this relationship has grown and grown, because a bit like, as I said earlier, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. Everyone is starting to see the benefits of it, and they're asking for more. And data is a double-edged sword, right? Once you start producing data and information and insight, it's constantly want more, right? They want more of it, more of it. To get more of it, you need better quality data, you need new data sets, and so forth. And it's resource intensive. So we found that the engagement with the UK sales team has been fabulous, and they keep on wanting more, which is great, right? And we're kind of going to use that. We're still doing a lot of work on our platform, to be fair. So we need to automate it a little bit more, so that actually is delivered to them as opposed to us presenting back to them. And we're working on that at the moment. And then all it takes is one of these leads, or one of this bit of insight, to lead to a sale. And, you know, I'm not going to say my job is done, but it really starts to snowball, right? And it pays for itself, because at the end of the day, it's about value.
Just to have sales teams on board and driving it forward, they're only going to be on board if what you're doing is helping them either do more in the time that they have, i.e. reach more people. I talk about tracking people's digital body language, though it's almost that type of idea. Diary and telephone, is, you know, there's only so many people you can get through in a day, isn't there, or in a year. So that's kind of what I mean. I think you having that greater visibility, presumably, if they're engaging and they're getting it, that they're seeing the benefits that gives them.
Absolutely. And I said, you know, it's like a snowball, right? Once you kind of launch it down the hill, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know, I also think as well that, you know, people have moved on in the 7 years that I've been there, insofar as their knowledge and understanding and the importance of data and insight has grown phenomenally. And I see that through all the different teams. And that is just because of what's happening in the marketplace, effectively. And getting the cut through, you really need to understand what are the customer expectations, not now, but, you know, perhaps in 2 weeks' time, right? And one of the things that we're looking at is, you know, looking at content and what content individuals are looking at, because, you know, people may think that Mr. A is looking at content A and that's all he's interested in, so we'll try and sell him fund A. But in fact, over the last 6 months, Mr. A has been looking at content B and C as well, right? So why is that? How do we tap into that? And all it takes is one call from a sales guy to say, listen, we've noticed that, you know, he's changing what he's reading. You may want to have a chat to him about it. And that's how it develops.
Because that can probably work in both ways, I imagine. It can work in, hey, customer A is considering these other products, but it may also be that customer A is in account is in jeopardy. They may be looking at moving, or
absolutely. I mean,
managing outflows just important, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's tricky. That's our sales cycle is so big, right? It's quite tricky, and people can leave quite quickly as well. I think, you know, in all the organizations I've worked in, trying to develop a really good churn model or retention model has always been difficult, right? But if there's any signals that people can give, yeah, absolutely. But again, I think we're not there yet.
Because this is kind of a fascinating subject you're getting into. You're almost getting to behavioral psychology mapping through content consumption.
Not just content consumption. I think it's any engagement. But yeah, you're right. I presume predominantly content consumption. Exactly. We as individuals have conscious and subconscious expectations and needs. And this is something that we did in my previous role at British Gas, was trying to tap in to that unknown need that the customer doesn't know they have
Yeah.
or need. They think, oh, I need gas and electricity, right? Okay, that's fine. But do they need insurance? And then it's about how do we
Yeah.
get them to trigger that so they go, God, I need insurance or something like that, And it's similar, yeah. And I have to say, one of the reasons why I stayed in my area and never moved is because customers are more or less all the same. We are human beings.
Yeah.
We have needs that need to be addressed, but we also have needs that we may not know need to be addressed. And it's a challenge. It's really trying to understand that so that we can deliver the best possible experience and product to the customers.
In order to develop this system, you need a lot of content. You need a lot of different types. I know that you've one of the key pieces of technology that you've put in place is a content management system.
Yeah.
Can you give us the background behind that? Talk to us about the system.
So when I talk about CMS, I'm talking digitally, right? So this is basically just the framework where we put all the content onto, and it's nothing exceptional. It's open source. It's not like I think where management of documents, which we are looking at the moment. So, and I think people will know the tools that I'm talking about. We're not there yet. But the CMS was chosen through an RFP effectively based on our requirements, which was about flexibility, about being able to distribute content from a global repository out to the local markets. They could choose what content they wanted because we could write content, but they may not be relevant to their client base, translations and so forth. So that was kind of our thinking. It has its limitations. I think just touching, if I may, a little bit on the content piece. Relevant content now is the key thing. Volume content, I think, is kind of finished. It's all about being relevant and on point. Content, I still believe, is king, is a key differentiator, but it's about real quality, less frequent, perhaps, content, because the channel is effectively email or digital, and there's a lot of people sending out content.
From your perspective around data and insight specifically, is there anything that you see within content that's changed over the last 7 years, that some either formats or types of content are better at generating certain levels of insight or text? I know you've obviously plug in everything from Bright Talk to your own video players, content management systems, tracking emails, articles. Is there, or is it the whole ecosystem all needs to be there together to work in harmony?
I think they all need to work in harmony.
Yeah.
But I think it's moving quickly.
Okay.
From my personal perspective.
Yeah.
I think, we've gone through emails, we've gone through the thought leadership, and everything needs to continue.
Yeah.
But it needs to evolve. How are people now digesting content? We live in a content world. We are bombarded by content. What are the key formats that people want? Is it 30-second video sound bites? Is it now through social? Is it TikTok? Is it, whatever. But I think it's constantly evolving. And I think asset managers and organizations need to evolve at the same pace as the customers.
Yeah.
What we are seeing is long form. People have 7-8 minutes to read it, or do they want 30 minutes, download it and read it on the way home on the train or whatever, read it the weekend?
Chances are you probably have customers that want one of each.
But there are, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We did some great analysis actually for one of the markets a couple of years ago on email. And we nailed it down, I think, to a 5-minute slot when emails should be sent to get the best engagement rate.
Wow.
And one of the emails in particular, the best time to send it was on a Saturday morning, which goes against your logic.
Yeah.
But the content who was addressed at, people were opening it first thing on a Saturday morning because they said, oh, keep it.
Yeah.
So now we send it out and it's still sent to this day on a Saturday.
Wow.
And we're still getting really good engagement rates. So, this is where you're starting to leverage this, going back a bit, but this data set to really understand how people are engaging with your content, how they want to engage with it, and when they want to engage with it. When I was at Dell, we used to have a saying which was spray and pray. So I used to spray people with the same information and pray that they would call you.
It would land,
Yeah, exactly. And I think when I first arrived, it was similar to that was kind of a similar approach in asset management. That has completely changed over the time I've been here.
Yeah, I think picking up on a couple of your points there, talking about the world is changing, the humans are, ultimately all of our customers, regardless if they're retail or professional or institutional investors, they are all experts at consuming content now. And the way that they are demanding what they expect from brands or businesses that they trust, that is evolving quickly as well. And if the asset management industry doesn't stay on top of that and move at that same level of pace, there's going to be this disconnect.
Yeah, agreed. And I think people are, we're certainly moving in that direction, is trying to meet, and it comes down to understanding what the expectations are, and trying to meet that demand. So yeah, I think that's the way it's going to go, and it's going to constantly evolve. I think the challenge is again comes down to educational pieces, like how do you start telling people that maybe your content is no longer relevant, if it's shown through data and engagement, for someone who's been writing something maybe for 10, 15 years or whatever.
Out of interest, what's your approach to when, because invariably content will become out of date. So what's your approach to keeping historical records, because that can be useful as well, versus just straight up overwriting? And
so it depends on the shelf life, what your perceived shelf life is. So there'll be some things which will be very factual in the moment, which, and you can see it through our GA, right? We can see, we launch something, we can just see it go up, on the number of hits and everything else, and then just fall off a cliff. So that tells us a lot of stuff. Our evergreen stuff is always, and that's why it's there, it's evergreen, so it continues at much lower levels. On the Institute, we have, we launch waves, and we do it in incremental. We don't launch everything all at the same time, because the trick is you want people to come back, right? So you always want to launch interesting content, you want to launch engaging content, and not just have a one-off read it all and come back 3 months later. So it's about making sure that they come back, because the ideal scenario is they start looking around elsewhere at other content.
Of course,
right? So we, going back to your question, because we develop a lot of content, you just can't keep it. You got to get rid of it. So we go through an exercise on a regular basis, working with the SEO agency and what is the greatest engagement and what would have the biggest impact on SEO if we were to delete it, and we just remove it.
Okay. So you got no harm about killing your babies, so to speak. No, that's good to know. I'm acutely aware that not everyone is as far down the line as AXA is. If people were starting out this journey, given that you've done this several times within your career, how do you start navigating this, especially with the volume of marketing technology tools available to you? I mean, I've seen one of those images, which it's just staggering,
and every week it gets bigger.
I mean, how do you kind of like shut out the noise, focus on the actual items that are going to actually move the business ROI forward?
What a great question, right? If I was to go back 7 years, I had a very clear strategy from my boss on what needed to happen, and was set up the function. I knew exactly what needed to happen very quickly, and that was getting the basics right. So marketing automation was the first thing I did, right? Has to be done. Get rid of all these different tools, use one tool, and you can start to collect data, and that is the start of it. 7 years on, there are so many tools out there, and I'm getting bombarded by emails saying more tools the best, etc. It comes down to having a clear vision of what you are trying to achieve within the strategy, right? So I have seen in the last year a lot of conversations around customer journeys, right? For those people who work in insight, customer journey is, bread and butter, has to be done. We did it 7 years ago, and we haven't done it since, because again, it's like, why do we need it? And they're quite expensive. However, when I notice these conversations happening and people saying to me, how is the customer journey? I'm going, wow, okay, great question. And I had to turn around to them and go, I actually can't tell you how the customer journey is now, because no one's ever asked me before. So I've never got anything to a tool to buy. We've now got a tool, and we're now mapping the customer journeys, digital customer journeys. And it's actually really refreshing from a customer insight person to be able to go back and say, right, this isn't working, that is working.
Yeah.
This is how the thing is happening. So again, it comes back to the maturity to a certain degree, around customer understanding and customer expectations. And another driver, I have to say, has been and this has been consumer duty in the UK, and the emphasis on understanding certainly vulnerable customers.
Yeah.
So that has widened the conversation in the UK, but the conversation is growing now in other markets. So it's actually it's loosened things up a little bit on that front. There are some great tools out there. It's literally going to the ones that you think might work, and then trying to understand, how does it fit with what I am trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And some of them are really good value, but you've got to be really, really clear on what you're trying to achieve, and don't be put off by flashing lights and, hooters and stuff.
Just to tie that together, then, it sounds like, rightly so, that depending on where you are, everyone's journey is going to be slightly different. So it sounds like you need to take a thorough audit of where you are right now, get that vision in place clearly of where you want to be, presumably get the buy-in from senior teams, because otherwise it sounds like it's going to be a non-starter. Then define your strategy for how you're going to move from A to B, then start using
agreed,
the marketing technology because otherwise you're just going to get lost in it, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do a lot of proof of concepts, and while at the beginning I wasn't a great fan of proof of concepts, I'm totally bought into it. Right, I'm totally bought into it. And my colleague in the US is doing a proof of concept with a tool for demand generation, right?
Okay.
And it's going really well. So the challenge that I've got now is, right, how do I bring it into other markets in Europe? Because we've got other, GDPR, we've got other things, except got compliance. But he had a very clear vision of what he wanted to achieve. And we discussed it and talked about it, and he went for it, and it's great. So yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Just on this proof of concept, because that's just makes me think of something else, because especially working within asset management, it's not easy to just say we're going to bring in a piece of new technology because of all of the regulations, rightly so, around I forget where I'm going with this now, but it's a hard task to get a new bit of kit in. So is there something that you can do when you're doing a proof of concept, which sort of, before we go through all of that rigmarole of getting a new piece of technology onboarded, can we do almost micro projects as proof of concept, just to make a decision of, is this valuable or not?
Yes.
How do you go about doing that?
So we do it at local market level with heavy involvement with technology, right? So at the end of the day, technology on technology, right? And I have a view that they own the box, we own what's in the box.
Right.
Rightly or wrongly, it's the way I like to look at it. But they own the ecosystem, they're the experts in their field. And I think, having spoken, and my team have a very strong relationship with technology. We have to, because these guys are, key to our success. And one of my counterparts said, we don't want to be bringing in numerous tools. Right. So when I brought in the marketing automation tool, it was this tool for everyone. And that's absolutely fine. And with the proof of concepts, they'll also go, okay, you've got that proof of concept in whatever market. Is this tool going to be rolled out globally? And that is the right approach.
Yeah,
But then it's down to me working with, because, to get that agreement across all the different markets.
I see. Yeah,
So, but they are, the relationship we have with technology, data privacy, compliance is absolutely key.
yeah.
And, it leads on to this great debate, right? Who owns MarTech, right? But that's for a different day.
I've heard both sides of that.
Well, it's interesting, I totally understand. I think what's happened is that marketeers' knowledge of data and systems has grown so much
Yeah,
over the last decade because of new tools and technology that there is a slight overlap, right, between traditional technology teams, etc.
yeah,
And you know, the knowledge, marketeers know about tech, and tech might know about marketing, but probably not to the same degree. So it's the key to it is coming together to work together, to get your requirements right from a business perspective, not just a tech perspective, but a business perspective, and then work together to get the right tool,
yeah,
right? That is absolutely key.
yeah, yeah,
And bring them on the journey.
yeah.
Otherwise, just get blocked.
Again, you're never going to get anywhere without
No,
pulling
exactly.
those people on.
Yeah,
So,
no.
so just to wrap us up and to give us, I guess, this something we talked about within just now about having that vision for where this could go. You're clearly very passionate about this subject. You're clearly very knowledgeable, and you can draw on sources from other industries. Can you give me an idea of where technology currently is within the capabilities of what you can do, and broadly where the asset management industry is on that spectrum, and what it's going to take to make that leap? Or are we there? Are we? Is that I think that's a question.
That is a question. Where are we on in comparison to other industries? Would that
Yeah,
be?
yeah, I guess that's
I think we're still behind. Not as far as we were when I first joined. As I said, I speak to my colleagues in other asset managers, and they are doing some pretty funky stuff, right?
right.
Um, which is great. I think it's absolutely wonderful. The key to it all, though, is getting the foundations right.
Yeah, like so
And
many things.
it's like so many things, and like so many different industries, you don't want to be getting carried away, right? And say, I'll use this as an example. I am not saying it's true. AI, right? Big thing. We're through the massive hype cycle, right? At the moment, everyone's going out buying AI tools or looking at AI, right? Which is great, super. Fundamental underlying data, which you need for your training data, especially for internal stuff, may not be up to speed. So why are you buying AI tools which you actually can't use?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's that, and that I think is in all industries. Where do I think we are in relation to other industries? I still think we're slightly behind, and others, but we're getting there. I think the understanding of data, customer data, the understanding of new technologies that benefit customer experience, customer journeys, has really sped up over the last 4 years post-pandemic. And people are really starting to grasp it as a benefit to the organization, not a cost.
Often when I ask this question, everyone says to me the same answer. So my question to you is, if you're looking into this space and you want to really crystallize what that vision is, what the best in the world looks like, most people would say look to what Amazon are doing. But Amazon is a very different business from asset management. And what my question to you is, if they wanted to look for an organization that's doing this very well, but more within the field that's similar in a B2B space as opposed to B2C, where would you say is either an industry or a company that is doing this really, really well that people could look to for inspiration?
I'm stumped.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I think that you talked about Amazon, you talk about any B2C organization. And they've kind of really nailed it. They've nailed it on the data. They've nailed it on the next best action. You know, where is the B2B? You could look at the banks, for example. I think one thing just bear in mind, I think when B2B organizations are looking at this, is we are all consumers at the end of the day, right? So when I go on my digital journey as a consumer, I have a bar that is set so high because of all the journeys I've been on and the experiences I've had. When I put on my B2B hat and I don't have that experience, I may be comparing it to the journeys that I have on the B2C space.
Yeah.
So that could be detrimental. So I think it's not about following or trying to replicate, but it's trying to actually meet to some degree the expectation of how I would be as a consumer. Things that work properly, getting, you know, not having 15 clicks to get to somewhere, sending me the right content, you know, use it. And these are the expectations that I think are starting to happen. But to go back, which is the industry? You know, I think any of the banks doing in the B2B space, probably they have to, they're regulated. I would say British Gas as well in the B2B space. When I was working there, British Gas business, they were really good. We did a lot of work on that. I'm not promoting anyone. So those would be my ones.
That's great. That it sounds like, again, it sounds like what you're saying there is just consider how you feel about what's good and what's bad within customer experience that we're experiencing on a day-to-day life with different brands that we engage with on digital touch points, and try and use that to reflect back into the organization you're in.
Absolutely. While the mindset might be slightly different, again, you know, I have had experiences which are far superior than the experience I'm getting now with my B2B hat on. And I would be expecting that because, you know, that is where my bar is set.
Yeah, that's great. Brian, thanks so much for taking time. What a fascinating discussion that was. I could have gone on all day. Learned a lot and lots to ruminate on. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening today to The Growth Engine. If you enjoyed this episode and like to hear more, please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from, and follow us on LinkedIn for regular updates or on hubagency.co.uk. Thank you, and see you next time.